Ali Reza Firouzja. By now, you must have heard of the name. If not, have you been living under a rock? Yeah. So Ali Reza Firouzja, he's been a rising star. He's 2720 right now in the live rating list. He's had tremendous success. He's won the richest titled arena. Very strong at bullet. He's even strong at short time controls. Everything. Just an incredible rising star. And Mr. Jorge Cori himself is no slouch either. He's also very young, very talented, and 2670. That's a very impressive rating. But they played this match, and Firouzja really, it was a very one-sided match. Firouzja really destroyed Jorge Cori. This game I'm going to show you, it's a very interesting game because not only did Firouzja play a very daring opening, but he also won in style, and you can see here that he won, so I'm not spoiling anything. Yeah, he won in style, and I should note though, one thing I should note is that the opening was the famous or infamous Budapest Gambit. It's not as bad as it seems. It's been played by Ivanchik mainly and at the top level. Even Kramnik has ventured the Budapest Gambit sometimes. It's not as bad as it seems. It's probably you could equalize with black if you know what you're doing, and of course white should have a way to get an advantage. It shouldn't be that good an opening, but actually it's quite decent. It's quite decent. It's playable at all levels, even at the highest level. Not like the King's Gambit, where probably at the highest level or like correspondence chess, you shouldn't play it. But here, even in correspondence chess, I don't think it's such a bad option. Anyway, yeah, so it's a fine opening, and Ivanchuk has been known to employ it. And another thing I should note is that Firouzja never played the Budapest Gambit that I know of. I searched his games, his classical games, and it doesn't seem like he's ever played the Budapest defense. But I should also mention is that at this point Firouzja won the match, and according to FIDE rules, when you win the match, the remaining games aren't counted for rating. So this game was not rated, and it didn't count for the match. So I guess that gave Firouzja a bit more leeway to play the Budapest. But he played it so well, and it suits his style so much. It's a very concrete opening where you have to calculate everything out. It's not an opening you can get by on feel. So that being said, I don't know why. Maybe it'll become a surprise weapon in the future. Anyway, d takes e5, of course you take the pawn, knight g4. I should also mention there's knight e4. This is the Fajarowicz variation of the Budapest defense. You will see it here, Fajarowicz. But the classical mainline, let's say, is to play knight g4. Knight f3 developing and defending this pawn, and now bishop c5. In his book on the Budapest defense, Mr. Timothy Taylor, he's the same guy who created the Taylor defense against the Smith-Morra Gambit. He recommends playing knight c6. And after bishop f4, we go into the normal main lines of the Budapest Gambit. And after e3, also we go into the main lines, where you take the pawn. So the idea after bishop c5 is to force white to play e3, and then it's a very interesting idea, this bishop c5 line. We're going to take a look at it as it unfolds in the game. Now the problem with this line, according to Timothy Taylor, is that after knight c6, here knight c3, castles, okay, knight c3, normal developing move, castles, you can't really retain this pawn, so bishop e2, you want to prepare kingside castling, rook e8, adding further pressure on this e5 pawn, castles, knight takes e5, knight takes e5, and now knight takes e5. This is the same position can be reached via a slightly different move order. Instead of knight c3 immediately here, you play bishop e2, and we go into the same variation. And now here this is called the Spassky Line, because as you can see here it was played by Spassky against Cordoba in Linares 1990. Here white plays king h1 with a very strong idea in mind, a5 and now f4. And now in this variation, instead of black having the fun and attacking white, it's actually white who gets an attack going with bishop f3, rook f3, rook h3. This is quite contrary to what happened in this Firouzja game. Here, Firouzja goes for, Cori goes for b3, and now it's black who gets to have the fun with this rook a6 and rook h6 maneuver. This is the point of this line of the Budapest Gambit with bishop c5, to play this rook to a6 and h6. And in his book, Timothy Taylor describes this plan as being too crude because you're wasting 3 tempos to get this rook to h6 and the bishop to c5, and it's like, yeah, I just want to mate you. It actually does work usually, this plan. It's not so easy to stop, but if you know if you're very well aware theoretically, it shouldn't be that good. So in this game, we'll take a look at it briefly. It's white who gets to have the fun. Instead of black getting in this rook a6, h6 idea, it's white who gets in this rook f3, rook h3 idea. So let's take a look a bit at the Spassky game. I'm not going to analyze it, we're just going to take a look at it without commentary, because then the video would be too long. So black gets in this, it's a bit of a clever idea, putting the knight on c5, but now he was forced to, this bishop came on c3, and he was forced to sacrifice these 2 minor pieces for the queen. Black does have some compensation thanks to the bishop pair and his good pieces, but of course it shouldn't be enough, and white duly converted his advantage. Here he's going to lose something, either the f4 knight or the e3 bishop. So let's go back to our game. Cori doesn't go for this king h1 line, he goes for the b3 line. And I should note that nowadays this b3 line is scoring better than the king h1 line, but for what reason it's unclear. I should also note that when you see these very strong players playing these openings, of course their calculation ability and stuff like that, it's insane, but they aren't too well aware of the intricacies of the Budapest defense because they almost never see this opening. Okay, so a5, bishop b3, the point of playing b3, rook a6, going for this rook h6 idea, and white tries to annoy black a bit by playing queen d5. So far this has all been seen. Black retreats his bishop, of course. You don't want to play d6 here and block this rook from coming here. That would be very counterproductive. So bishop a7, also the bishop keeps an eye on this diagonal. Knight e4, activating this bishop, activating this knight. Perhaps later on there are knight f6, knight g5 ideas, and actually this does happen in the game. And now rook h6, gunning for an attack. Now in this position, the theory, white goes greedy, Cori that is, and takes on a5. I'm not sure if he studied this, if that was his novelty. Queen takes a5 is a novelty, and actually it's not such a bad novelty. It leads to a probably equal position, and you have a pawn up, and with the bishop pair, you have to fight for your life for the attack, but if you get out of it unscathed, you'll win in the end game. So that was a very interesting concept by Cori. I'm not sure if he prepared it for another game. Actually, looking at the move times, 58 minutes and here 31 minutes, he probably had to calculate everything. But the common theoretical move here is bishop takes e5. And now you did lose a piece, so you have to play c6 to get the piece back. And now the insane desperado move is bishop f6. So you're going to lose the bishop anyway, the queen has to retreat and you lose the bishop, so why not lose it in style, huh? And here g takes f6 is usually played, queen f5, adding further pressure here, and bishop b8, adding pressure on h3, knight g3, aiming perhaps for knight h5 and blocking the threat on h2, d5, attacking the queen, and now queen f3. And this position has been seen once in master games, and it was a draw. And it looks like a very computerish draw. So if you know some really deep theory, you can go for this. Here, of course, bishop f6 is an insane move, which you should remember if you want to play this line. Yeah. So, but he played queen takes a5, his novelty, and Firouzja went for bishop b6. d6 is actually an interesting alternative. The aim is to play this kind of position after bishop takes e5, to play rook takes e5, and which is an alternative. So you can play bishop b6 here or rook takes a5. Note that queen takes a7 doesn't work because of queen takes e4, and this position should be about equal. White is up a pawn, but black has a lot of activity to compensate. So d6 was an alternative, but Firouzja decides to keep more pieces on the board. He wants to win. He plays bishop b6. See, he even wants to win even when he's down, even when the game doesn't matter for rating or for the match. So bishop b6. Here, the problem with taking this pawn after queen takes a5, bishop b6, you have to go to a8 now, just to put some pressure on the c8 bishop in case these two pieces move away from the back rank. And actually that's not such a far away consideration. Yes, these two are present on the back rank right now, but soon that might turn around. So queen a8. Queen e1 is an alternative which doesn't work because of queen h4, and now there's a fork here. You're forking h2, threatening mate, and you're attacking this knight. So h3 has to be played and you lose a knight. After bishop b6 also something like queen b5 also doesn't work because of d6. Now note that here you really can't go for this because I have this attack on this. So if I go queen h4, you can just take here and you're protecting h2. So queen b5 d6 though, aiming for bishop d7 ideas. And now I protect the mate threat. You go bishop d7, I go queen b4, and now I come here anyway, knight g3, and I can take on h3. And this wins. There's too much pressure. Takes, I take here, I'm threatening mate. And this knight could also be used in the attack. So this is over. So after bishop b6 you have to go queen a8, and now Firouzja decides to go for d6. Knight c6 was also possible, d5 was also possible, but I believe both are inferior to d6, and even something crazy like bishop takes e3 was possible. The point is that, okay, here bishop takes e5, you trade a lot of pieces, and if f takes e3, you play this, trapping the queen. Queen b8, and knight c6, and you trap the queen. And if queen takes a6, of course you just take back and you're up a queen. So this position is so complex and so deep, so tactically rich. So you can imagine here, after instead of d6, you can play this insane bishop takes e3, opening up for this rook to trap the queen. That's insane. So he can't play this. And I imagine if you play it in a blitz game, everyone would fall for it. So yeah, that's insane. I imagine Firouzja would find such an idea and pull it. But in classical, he decided to go for d6, just keep everything stable, and it's probably the best move. So Cori goes for counterplay, playing c5. Very, very well, on the surface it's a very good move, but there is actually a tactical flaw. It's a very good move in principle because it's just opening up this d file for white, giving the queen some breathing room, and annoying this bishop. So yeah, in principle it's a very good, like, freeing type of move. But actually here bishop takes e5 was needed. And if you remember earlier, instead of queen takes a5, the theoretical line is bishop takes e5, which would probably lead to a draw. Well, an equal position, a draw in engine terms. So bishop takes e5 here, and d takes e5, and now you need to play g3 to prevent queen h4, and the sample line goes queen e7, preparing to annoy this queen with bishop g4 or bishop h3, c5, an incredible move, trapping this bishop, and now bishop g4. I should note here that after bishop h3, which seemingly wins an exchange, there's simply queen a4, and now bishop d7, and queen c4, and this position should be about equal. Note that if you try to win the exchange here, I simply take back, and your bishop is still hanging and it's trapped. So after bishop takes e5, if d takes e5 is played, g3, queen e7, and now after c5, bishop g4 is played, attacking the bishop, and now the idea is an incredible queen sacrifice, and here this position is actually around equal. You see the battle between the light squared bishop and the dark squared bishop. The dark squared bishop doesn't really have much scope, while the light squared bishop has a lot of scope, and this knight is helpful, and this rook is a bit awkwardly placed, so white has more than enough compensation, and if anything, white can play for a win. There's a forced computer line here after f5. Here you create the seeming fork, attacking h2, and now after h4 you take the bishop, he takes here, you take here, and f3, this should be around equal. You have a pawn and the rook and the knight against the queen, and if you can get the rooks coordinated, probably white can play for a win, but it should be around equal. If instead after bishop takes e5, rook takes e5 is played, so this is all just to remind you. So here instead of Cori's c5, bishop takes e5 was warranted, and here if rook takes e5 is played, c5 again, and all of the complications seem to lead to a very equal position. So all of the complications seem to lead to a very equal position. So after c5, rook takes e4, taking here, this is equal. Black has more than enough activity to compensate for his material deficit. Rook takes e5, c5, d takes c5, you win back a pawn, and after this you're also equal. Queen f8 is played to protect the queen, and now you're preparing to move the bishop. And if anything, black can play for an advantage here with the bishop pair. And after rook takes e5, c5, bishop takes c5, taking and taking here like this. You can also take like this, but the problem here is that after bishop g4, f5, b4, and this, white gets an advantage. So here after bishop takes c5, so after c5, I know this is a lot to digest, but bear with me. So after rook takes e5, c5, bishop takes c5, now simply knight takes c5, and d takes c5 is the move, and after rook fd1 we can probably make a draw with black, but don't take here with the rook. After bishop takes c5, knight takes c5, don't take with the rook, because there's bishop g5. Bishop f3 is also an alternative, but bishop g4 is even stronger, getting the spin. You have to play f5 to block the pin, that's the only move. And now b4, bishop f3 is again also possible, but here better is b4, dislodging the rook, and now bishop f3, and now you again attack the pawn. And c6 isn't a move you really want to play, so this gives an advantage for black. You see, I'm a bit tied up on the back rank, but you're not forced to do this. After knight takes e5, you simply play d takes, and here you probably just move queen f8 or maybe even rook d6, and you're probably completely fine. So that being said, Cori plays c5, which is a mistake due to what Firouzja plays, queen h4, and now bishop takes e5 is forced, because otherwise if you play h3 you simply lose this knight for not much compensation. So something like h3, I take here, let's say you take, and now I have a very strong attack with this move. Okay, so queen h4, bishop takes e5, removing this attacking knight and protecting h2, and giving white time to perhaps do something about this e4 knight, even though that's not possible. So d takes e4, and now here he plays f3. Better, actually, was to play h3. And h3 is tactically working, because if I play here, you simply take here. So black probably plays bishop d7, attacking the queen. You take on b7, and now bishop c6, attacking, forking these two pieces. And after queen, you take here, and now queen a4. So I can imagine that Cori stopped calculating here, because this seems lost. But after queen a4, note that you really can't take like this, because simply there's bishop f3. So you have to take with the bishop. And now queen here protects, well, kind of, not forces, but makes a queen trade possible. And it also attacks the e8 rook, something that happens in the game later. So the rook has to move. And now this bishop can't move, because of course black doesn't want to trade queens. So it kind of pins the black queen in a sense. It pins the black bishop in a sense to the queen. So rook a8 is played, making use of the strong bishop on e4. And now queen c4, still maintaining this threat of trading queens. Bishop a7, and this position should be around, I wouldn't say equal, but it should, no, it's better for black with the bishop pair and the attack. But white should be able to hold, probably. Well, it's better than f3, let's put it like that. Maybe white can't even hold that, but it's better than f3. f3 just simply loses. After queen takes h2 check, of course, what else? You're dropping a pawn. King f2. What's surprising is that he thought, Cori thought this position was so bad that he had to play f3 here, giving up a pawn with check and all of that. So that's a bit surprising. And now here, Firouzja goes for rook g6, which is a slight inaccuracy. Actually, I would call it a blunder. After king f2, you need to play queen h4 check, because after king g1, now you're closing off this escape route for white. And here, though, Firouzja needed to find this incredible rook f8 move. This threatens this. What does rook f8 do? It simply protects the rook. So now that here the point of queen a8, of course, is that it's annoying the back rank. Don't forget, I told you about that earlier. So bishop h3 wouldn't be possible here. But now rook f8, where were we? So now simply here, rook f8 simply protects this rook, and now I'm prepared to play bishop h3. So queen a3 getting out of this discovered attack, and now bishop h3 simply wins. g3, queen e7. Of course, if the bishop is taken, I take on h3. King f2 trying to escape, because there was a mate threat on h2. Check. The knight comes, and now I simply pick up the knight. There's no escape. Absolutely no escape. A very cute line here, just no escape. So after rook f8, queen a3, removing the queen, forced from this bishop h3 idea. Queen a3, bishop h3. Now g3, trying to protect. Queen e7, and now you can see that queen e7 lines up with this a3 queen, so that if white takes, I simply take the queen. So bishop c4, and now king h8, and I want to play bishop f5, remove this knight, take on c5, take on e3, and this is just the winning attack for black. Instead, Firouzja goes for rook g6, attacking this g1, this g2 pawn, and he defends, Cori defends, bishop d7, activating the bishop, queen a3, and bishop h3. So he plays this first because his rook on e8 was hanging. Imagine Firouzja playing bishop h3 immediately and getting mated on e8. Yeah, that's not going to happen. Let's show it for the crowd. Not happening. So bishop d7 first, queen a3, and now bishop h3. And again, he has a lot of threats, and bishop f1. So Firouzja probably saw this and thought that these pieces being so tied up here makes white have a hard game. And he wasn't wrong, but the other line was much stronger. So f5 now, removing this knight, probably preparing maybe later e3 stuff, weakening also white's control over c5. Perhaps later in the future he can do something about it. And now white finds this incredible queen a4 move. Very accurate and very strong. Not only does this attack the rook, but also later on, as we will see, this idea becomes possible. And now Firouzja blunders the game away by playing rook d8, a seemingly very normal move, but a move that suffers from a tactical flaw. In fact, to maintain his advantage, he had to play the incredible king f8, just protecting the rook, and yeah, simply protecting the rook and keeping this knight on pre, so that if takes, we take on e4. An alternative was also rook f8, but this runs into this incredible knight g5 idea. After takes, there's queen h4, what we talked about earlier. The queen is able to swing to life, and now it's actually black. It was before seemingly white who had this these tight pieces who were kind of jumbled up, but now it's actually black who has these tight pieces that are jumbled up. So rook g4 here, probably the only move, making use of a tactic, of course. If takes, I take here with check, and this should win. So rook g4, bishop c4 check, king h8 takes, and now this insane g5 idea. Note that after f takes g4, king e2, black is simply fine, white is simply fine and winning. So g5 and takes, and this position should actually be winning for white also. Actually it's better for white, not winning, yeah. But instead Firouzja blunders, plays rook d8, and now Cori finds the incredible rook d1, which was probably missed by Firouzja. The idea is that after takes I have a mate on e8, so you have to move the rook again. So Firouzja blundered with rook d8 because he could have went for rook f8 immediately. So he went rook d8, he got this rook to a better square, and then played rook f8. So he blundered. And now Cori goes for queen c4 check, which unfortunately loses. The only way to win here was the incredible knight g5 again rearing its head. Rook takes g5, and now this incredible queen h4, tying up all of black's forces. And also don't forget, it's attacking 3 pieces. So now the h3 bishop is under attack by queen takes h3. The g5 rook is under attack by queen takes g5, and the b6 bishop is under attack due to c takes b6. So an incredible move that was missed by Cori, unfortunately. So f4 here, let's say, you simply take the rook. Takes on c5, trying to do something on e3, I check you, and I move the king away, and here you're completely lost. After the rook d8, there's no way to stop the mate. You can just check white around a bit. And here if bishop f5, you force the queen trade, and of course here white is completely winning. So after rook takes g5, queen h4, let's say you protect the rook. Now I simply take the bishop, and don't forget this bishop will be lost as well, and it's lost, and I'm simply up a piece. Yes, my king is a bit unsafe, but I'm up a piece, and these queens will probably get traded. Here you probably have to go for queen f4, and I can probably start my own counterplay even. So unfortunately this was missed by Cori. He goes for check. Firouzja simply went for king h8, and now queen f7, again making use of this back rank, but this is even worse now. Here Cori had to take the bishop, and after taking the knight, take on e4 and hope for the best. White's pieces are forever tied up. This is incredibly bad, and black should be able to win this, but probably a better chance. Here he went for this, and Firouzja simply moved out of the way, still with the same threats. He moved knight g5, but now there's not this queen h4 idea, and here it's simply resignable. Why is this resignable? I have an equal amount of pawns. Actually, currently black is even up a pawn, and you can't do anything about this situation here. I will probably later play e4 and just finish off this attack. So this is actually what happened. Black got some breathing room with h6. They traded, and now with even a rook down, with even the rooks traded, this configuration you'll never be able to get out of. So actually here, white simply resigned. Probably disgusted by the match and disgusted by this game as well. So an insane and incredible game by Firouzja, and yeah, it was a very beautiful display. Unfortunately, he blundered at one point, but Cori wasn't. He probably was so mentally beat down he wasn't able to find this incredible knight g5, which would have actually turned the tables, and not only would it have drawn, it would have won. So that's why the Budapest Gambit isn't so often played, because it's such a razor sharp opening. It's teetering on edge. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching. I'll see you in the other sections of this video. So as a summary, a good antidote to the 4 bishop c5 line in the Budapest is the Spassky line with king h1 and f4, so that you don't fall victim to black's typical plan of a5, rook a6 and rook h6. And getting rid of the e5 knight if you choose not to play the Spassky line is also very important. It's a very important idea that you should keep in mind, because then you are able to remove a lot of black's counterplay, and having white's pieces tied up on the g2 pawn is a good idea, as we saw in this Firouzja game. But you should also be very careful that your own pieces don't end up tied up. So this queen on h3 and this this queen on h2 and this bishop on h3. I should also note that here there isn't a lot to summarize, because this opening is very concrete, so it's on a move by move basis. The key concepts for both white and black are this a5, rook a6, rook h6 maneuver for black, a very important idea. If you're not playing this 4 bishop c5 line with this idea in mind, you're really going to suffer a lot as black. And of course king h1 f4 for white to counteract this idea by black. It's the Spassky line. And as black, when you do get an attack going, remember to put your queen on h4 to threaten this mate on h2. Put your rook on g6, potentially threatening queen takes h3, and queen takes h2 check, of course, if white defends with f3. Knight f3 check ideas are also in the air, and of course bishop c6 ideas later on to get a good light squared bishop, to get this light squared bishop attacking white. And also as black, you really need to maintain the dark squared bishop. It's the source of your incredible counterplay. Of course the light squared bishop as well is very important to maintain, but the dark squared bishop more so. And there's this idea as black to sacrifice an exchange, just to weaken white's pawn structure, to have his kingside pawns and his central pawns weakened, so that you can later pick them off and you enjoy a good bishop pair advantage. That's also key. So application in novel settings. Let's see how we can apply this opening to a novel setting. And let's take a look at it from black's perspective. So we get basically the same line here. Okay, and now b3, a5, bishop b3, and now again this idea. Here instead white goes for knight e4 instead of queen d5. The bishop retreats, but still the very same almost ideas. Now incredibly rook f6, just simply attacking this knight, asking it where it wants to go. And now white feels a bit cramped and goes for f4, probably a mistake. Simply we sacrifice the exchange here. We sacrifice the exchange. Black, of course, white of course doesn't take, because then e3 would hang and we'd get more than ample compensation with our rook coming here and swinging over. So he doesn't take, and Mamedyarov here sees ghosts and doesn't take the pawn. Maybe he doesn't want to open up so many lines for white. He goes for rook g5 instead, aiming to attack g2. White simply attacks f7. You don't want to play g6 because that would weaken the long diagonal. So he plays f6 instead, also protecting the rook. But of course the sacrifice is an exchange. So really, Mamedyarov wanted to sacrifice an exchange from the get-go. He wasn't, white didn't accept his exchange sacrifice here. because that would lose a strong dark squared bishop. But here he said, okay, the right squared bishop, fine, I'll finally give you the exchange. Now we played bishop d4, aiming to trade the dark squared bishops, and of course a very clever move, bishop b8. Not only stopping this bishop trade, but also incredibly lining up with this h2 pawn. So now we'll get to see how Mamedyarov makes use of this. It might be a strange move, looks like on developing, you're putting, what is this, chess 960, a bishop on c8 and bishop on b8, but very, very smart. So queen f3, a bit of a mistake. Already here, black should have gone for, white should have gone for e4 to prevent c6 d5, the plan we will see in this game. So, sorry, c5 d5. So here, queen f3, and now c5, attacking the bishop thanks to this rook on g5. The bishop has to move, and now the incredible d5, and now h2 is under fire. So white decides to remove the threat. Of course, if you take here, I simply play rook h5, and this threat is way too strong, among other threats later on. So h3, and now bishop e6, aiming to protect d5 simply, and if takes, I take back and get another diagonal for myself. So rook a d1, adding further pressure on the d5 pawn. Instead here, probably rook f2 was warranted just to protect this g2 square, which will be under fire soon enough. And now the incredible rook g3. The queen has to move. Again, queen e2 was a better square, but Mamedov made this mistake, queen f2, allowing bishop takes h3. Wow, what a move. And now the idea is that queen d5 check is coming. So if takes, there's this very lovely queen d5 check. And here is this is not a mate yet, but it's pretty close. Okay, so rook takes d5 was played, queen d5 again with the same ideas. Check, I go up, I don't care if you take my bishop on b8, I simply mate you. This is what he did, and now taking on h3, and rook g6, and mate is coming. And after here, mate here. So an incredible mate, so an incredible game by Mamedyarov. It shows us that these exchange sacrifice ideas are very well possible in this line of the Budapest. A fun fact is that the first known chess game to feature the Budapest Gambit was Adler versus Marocci in 1896. Adler wasn't such a well-known player, but Marocci was a very famous player, and it showed the Marocci point, of course, and showed a very nice attacking idea by black, but Adler didn't really react in the best way as white. So that's one of the first known chess games to feature the Budapest Gambit. So future considerations, will we see Firouzja ever venture the Budapest Gambit ever again in classical chess? Probably, and even in Blitz and Bullet, will he play it? And do you agree with me that Firouzja really is on the rise and he'll be able to keep this up and become the next world champion, or will he kind of hit a plateau soon? And I don't know. And really, how would AlphaZero play the Budapest? Not Leela. I mean, Leela would also play it in a probably really weird, crazy way. That's very interesting to see. But I mean, AlphaZero itself, how would it play it? Because it does have some stylistic differences from Leela. So yeah, that's a very interesting open-ended question as well. Okay, and with that we end this video, and thanks for watching, guys.